You're listening to the Drinks and a Movie podcast, hosted by Rudy Ruiz. Spoiler alert.
Uncle Wes, why can't you stay?
They need me to help them try and stop this. We're the only family we have left.
We got this.
Tonight, when that sun sets, it's gonna be every man for himself.
We have a 9-hour window to test and report our findings. We hope to see if this mutation can be blocked.
Let's go over the rules.
Don't open the door for anyone.
Don't hesitate for a second.
No more guns, no more guards. Those things are coming for us.
I'm here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Drinks and a Movie podcast. Thanks for checking out this new episode here on the YouTube. I've got a very special guest, Brandon Cox, with me, the cinematographer behind the new movie Werewolves that just came out this weekend. So I saw it yesterday on Friday, and this episode will be out Monday. So it's out right now. Make sure you go see it in theaters. We're going to be chatting about it. So Brandon, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I appreciate it. And I know you. I believe you interviewed Steven as well, and
not Steven, but I did
Frank,
have
right?
Alec Gillis.
Alec
Was on.
That's
yeah.
right. That was right.
Yeah.
That was Alec. Alec, just look, anybody that champions the film, and thank you to your audience for having and you for having me on. But anybody that champions the film and wants to talk about it, I think it's great. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. Talk everything werewolves and drinks.
Yeah. Yeah. I really dug it. It was just like a fun kind of like throwback classic monster movie, a lot of action. I remember when I had Alec Gillis on, he's like, yeah, you guys would love it. It's Frank Grillo with a minigun killing werewolves and practical effects and all that. I'm like,
right. Yeah, exactly. It's it's one of those things where I think going in when I read the script, and when Steven gave me the script, he said, and this is the truth. Steven's been wanting to do a werewolf movie for a long time. And so that's in his DNA. He's always wanted to do a werewolf movie, but then saying, I want to bring the classics back from the 80s, the 70s, the monster movies that we love. Like I want to bring back Alien. I want to bring back Aliens. I wanted to make Aliens, but their aliens are werewolves. Yeah. And we want to make this thing fun. And, who better to do it than Alec Gillis, who's, a giant in the world. He came up with Stan Winston. He worked on Aliens. Mm-hmm. He's worked on The Predator, all the things. And obviously you've interviewed him. But just to have somebody of that caliber on this and work with him and really, go all into it, I thought it was like a no-brainer, It was a no-brainer. So that's, for me, I was like, I've never done a creature movie before. Yeah. So for me, it was a challenge, but it's also, I like challenges and I like being challenged. So I wanted to do it.
Yeah, no, it was great. You can definitely see that DNA in it. And even in some of the shots and composition, like you'll get this kind of backlit profile of the mouth opening and the growling, and it takes you back to like the alien aesthetic, Pumpkinhead, all those kind of vibes. And it's interesting. It made me realize when I was watching it how much you kind of miss that these days, because I don't know, it just looks so different compared to anything now, and it almost feels, at certain points there's certain shots where it's like, man, this feels almost like it came out of that era, but obviously it's 2024, which is pretty cool. I really dig that.
Yeah, I mean, and that was sort of the thing, when we first talked about it, and what happened was Steven gave me this script. We had done a film in 2018 with Aaron Eckhart, this movie called Line of Duty. And right after that, I believe it was when it premiered in like 2019, this is pre-pandemic. He's like, hey man, I have this amazing script. this werewolf script. And I'm like, oh, okay. But he's like, it's nothing you've ever read before, because it was, and at that time, the movie was called Year Two. because
That's right.
they
Yeah.
mentioned the supermoon in the movie, but what happened year one? So saying year two, that's why it was called year two, and it leaned into that a lot. Now, would we have loved to have made a movie to show the scale of what happened in year one? Of course, but obviously the budget wasn't there. So we knew it was going to be sort of a smaller contained thing. But when you're calling back to movies like that you mentioned, like Pumpkinhead and Aliens, there is something about it where, you know, there was no CGI back then, and there was no, you know, as much as just inundated the culture now in these films. And so when you're dealing with a physical, actual creature and a guy in the suit, you have something that's physical and tangible. It's there. So it's good for the actors, but it's also, you have to like this thing and not make it look fake. So that was a challenge. And we did numerous tests with Alec, which he was such a great help working with him, because I was very straight up. I said, look, I've never done a creature feature before, and I want to know, you know, I have an idea of what I want to do. And, you know, and there was testing when I first saw the Werewolves, you know, it was about how much hair and how much of the muscles do you want to see? And it looks too much like a coyote from like a cartoon. It doesn't look like a werewolf. And so the eyes were wrong, all these things. And so it was constantly trying to figure that out. And then we found when we were testing, with the camera, we would set it up and I'd light it really dark and backlit. Now backlit was great. If it was too front lit, it looked absolutely fake.
Right.
So that's where I had to be very, you know, strategic. That's where I came in and relied on with Alec. And I did this thing where I try to get a little eye light in there. And so at certain times you'll see a little glint of yellow in their eyes and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, that's basically, you know, I was excited about it. So it started in 2019, pandemic happened. And then finally in 2022 in the spring, that's when we started to do it.
Nice. Yeah, man. Yeah. I love that. I'm going to pour a little bit of my mezcal right here. So
go for that.
We were talking a little bit about this before. I don't have anything werewolf related, but I got this recently, and it's a jaguar head. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's a jaguar.
That's very cool.
And
that's I see it. Yeah,
it's got to be like backlit. But I was all right. The closest thing I got, and I just got this recently.
Looks like a bottle of Sex Panther.
Yeah. I tried this recently. It was pretty good. What are you having? I know you were making a cocktail or something.
I want to have an old fashioned because for one, Steven and I are big old fashioned fans, and I think an old fashioned would go quite well with watching Werewolves. So we saw the movie on Wednesday. I saw the movie for the first time on Wednesday.
Oh,
so
really?
I could, because I couldn't color it because I was on another movie, but I gave notes and all that. But I'd seen a rough cut about 4 or 5 months prior to that, and they were still trying to figure out what works, what wasn't. There wasn't any of the transformations in there and all that. But when I and Steven had then once he cut all that in, he kept emailing me saying, "Hey, do you want to watch it on? Do you want a link?" And I just kept saying, "You know what? I'm going to wait on this one. I'm going to wait on this one. I want to see it." And we were hoping for a big screen release, and so I'm thoroughly glad that I waited, because it was like I was watching the movie for the first time, but like as an audience member and realizing I didn't shoot it. So it was fun to see it that way. But I saw it Wednesday night at the Grove, and then I saw it Thursday night. Steven introduced it over at AMC in Burbank. And there, before we went into the movie, I had an old fashioned. So I'm going with the old fashioned. I had some mezcal last night with a friend, so I'm there with you.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with an old fashioned.
No, not at all. They're the best.
Yeah, this is a Cabal mezcal. It was pretty pricey. It's from a Salminia agave, which takes 14 years to mature before they can harvest it. And yeah, it's a good one. I think it's like 110 proof or something too. It's up there, maybe just under 110, which I love. You know, both whiskey like bourbon, rye, but even mezcal and tequila. Right. I love when they're over the 100 mark.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of bullet bourbon. I'm like, I'm all good with that. You know, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Thanks. So when you, I mean, since you were saying you weren't in the involved too much in like the coloring process and all that. Did you extensively test out LUTs and all that when you were doing the camera test with the wolves as well?
Yeah, we did. And in Puerto Rico, where we filmed in San Juan, Puerto Rico, there was a really good, there was a tax incentive there at the time. And when we were down there in 22, it was really busy and it was hard to get in Atlanta and in other places that have pretty big tax incentive states. And so Puerto Rico kind of opened their doors to us. And we were lucky. There was a post facility down there. The name is escaping me right now. I feel bad, but we would basically shoot the footage, go over to the post facility. They had a colorist. We would try certain things, lighter, darker, all this, emphasize certain things. And so I could see it immediately on a bigger screen and then go from there. And then the LUTs that I had, and I had take stills. I took stills for all throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. I basically had those, and I couldn't make it to the color, but I would email those to Steven. So they would try to kind of nail it. In that sense. So they ended up coloring the movie down there at the same place we did the test. So it all worked out pretty good, you know?
Yeah. Because I know there seems to be, from people I've talked to, like maybe two schools of thoughts with this, where I talked to a couple cinematographers, one being Natasha Breyer, who was very much into like baking the LUTs in, like testing pretty extensively, and we'll bake it in so that after the fact, it's like no one can really change. Like they'll do masks or whatever, but no one is completely redoing the look. Whereas others are like so opposed to that because they want that control after. I'm curious, like, do you fit in any sort of camp there? Or does it depend on the movie?
I mean, I have a lot of cinematographer friends, and they range of all facets, from some of the highest EPs to, you know, where I am or whatever. And it's a control thing, and they don't want anybody to mess with their images. So what I like to do, I like to use LUTs, but I don't like to bake them in, because if something changes or we haven't, because I want the ability, if I do change my mind, because sometimes at the time I like a certain look, but then I've been away from it and then I see the edit and then maybe that color doesn't really work for the way they did it, or my eyes changed some. I normally, lately, I've been sticking to what I'm putting in there, and then we just enhance in the DI, but I can understand, on bigger movies, I can understand to keep that process, because somewhere it can get lost in the matrix, and then you're dealing with a bunch of people that probably shouldn't be making decisions on color.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I can understand where Natasha's coming from. So I do love using LUTs. I don't really like baking them in, because that goes back to the film, when people were shooting film, because when I was shooting film, and music videos, I learned very quickly I couldn't do that, because I was baking in looks, and then the directors would be, when you get to the DI and the scanning process, they'd be like, "Whoa, why can't I mess with this? Because I can't do what I want." I said, "Well, you said you wanted to do this.
Yeah,
that's what I did. Well, I want the ability to change it if I want to." So that's where that's why I say I like using LUTs. I like to them, but then it may change in the end post result. So I believe in it, but I also understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess, that loss of control that can happen sometimes. Like, I imagine the last thing you want is for, you know, the werewolf movie to suddenly be like 2 stops brighter than intended or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you don't want. And you don't want some executive making decisions on your color, because they probably aren't have the training or the bandwidth to deal with that. So yeah.
I did one short film. I guess a few years ago now, like 2019 or 20. Yeah. And there was a nighttime, like nightmare scene. And then, you know, then they wake up and the couple are talking. So, you know, we lit it for night. And then when I saw the final edit, they brightened it to look like daytime. And it's like, but you can tell there was a lot done. And I'm like, why didn't, like, you all saw the monitor, like it's a nighttime scene. No one said anything. And so, stuff like that. And then, you know, of course you see like the noise and like the deep shadows, and it's it's nobody's paying attention to what you're looking for. And, and you know, there's certain things where I have a photographic memory on certain things. So if I'm shooting something and I remember, if my key grips
sort of like, oh, I can't take down that shadow over there. I know. I'll make a window in the DI. Don't worry. And you won't remember. I said, no, I will remember. And then when it comes to that, it's like, okay, that wall over there needs to come down, or this or that, or a colorist I work with, and normally they'll do something right before I'm about to say to do it. So it's like you try to work with people when you do go to that phase, or when you do have a chance to do it. You try to work with people that have the same sort of aesthetics as you. And if you are doing a DI and your colorist isn't working in response to what you want, then you're going to have like a clash of ideas, and then you're trying to pull something out of them, which they just can't do, Yeah. And I've been there. I've been to that situation. It's frustrating. So, yeah.
Going back to, the Werewolves itself and doing those tests. I mean, how are you approaching? You talk about like backlighting it. You don't want it to be too front lit, otherwise you kind of lose the magic of it, I guess.
Sure.
But then how are you? They're pretty dark, right? So you've got to be really intentional about like how much you're going to fill it in, like when it comes to lighting. And I imagine that's got to be a pretty big challenge, right? It's so like, or is that
it is? Simple? It is. It was a lot, because every time the backlight part worked really well, and where you became very difficult was when you were trying to get some side light or an edge, something on there. You'd stick a light, and the dark color of the fur would just eat the light away. So, gosh, I need a bigger light. So you'd have to come in with more and closer, and just really do that. And we found that Alec would always spray them down with a little bit of like mist of water, or he was glycerin or whatever, and then using slime on their mouths, and that would just give them sort of a wet texture to it. But when the light would hit it, it would glisten on it. So I was constantly trying different sources, but I ended up always backlighting them, and I'd get some stronger side light, and then maybe come in with a little bit of fill, but never ever front light them. Which like I know, and I don't want to give anything away. There's a battle in the rain between two werewolves. But that was, if you can see, that's very contrasty, but really hard sources coming from the back and from the side. But you can see a little bit of detail in there, but it's still dark enough to where it's not giving too much away, right? That's probably the most you see them in the movie too, I think.
Yeah.
Because that was pretty the thing. And again, I have to thank Alec the whole time, because, he would be like, hey, Brandon, maybe give me a little eye light here. And I welcome that, because I said, listen, man, we're a team here. This is nobody's precious baby. We're all doing, because it is, once you go into the fact that, hey, we're making a werewolf movie and we're using practical werewolves, there's something special about that, because again, not many people are wanting to do that right now. The easy, simple solution is, we'll just CGI the whole thing,
Right.
But, and we knew there's certain transformations in the movie. Unless you build out a human body and do the whole thing. I mean, God knows, I'm sure that somebody can do it. Alec could probably do it, but it would cost the earth to do.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of limited on what we could do. So I like the mix of CGI and practical that we did do. But we tried to stay true to that sort of nature. And the other thing I will say is, when we did do tests, I would put a certain lens on, and the werewolf would be certain far away. We found this hallway set that we ended up using in the movie, but they're still building it, but I would light it for whatever. And I tried it under flashing lights. I tried it under just regular lights, all on backlight side light. But if I put the werewolf far away from the camera, it looked real, right? And then you would move it, say 10 feet closer, and then all of a sudden you'd be in this weird, I don't know if that looks like a suit, or I don't know what's going on, but then you would move closer, and then it was, oh wow, this looks real again. So there were certain times that you had to be careful by what lens you used and how far it was from the camera. So that was another battle we were dealing with. So, and we would always constantly ask ourselves and give ourselves a gut check. Alec would ask Steven would ask me, I would ask Alec, Steven, hey, does that look real? Do we need more here? Do we need more light? So we were always constantly trying to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask about the lens choice and that consideration next, because it looks like it was anamorphic, right? There's like the anamorphic flares, and you get that kind of bokeh. But it didn't look, at least in my screening, it didn't look like it was a too 4:1 aspect ratio or anything. You know, it was still
Right.
like what did you use? And I mean, I guess you kind of already spoke about it, but
No.
how did that
I can tell you.
affect like the because I know they tend to like distort on the edges, and like you
Yeah.
said, maybe it'll make the depth look a little more than it really is. I mean, yeah, I guess
Right.
what lenses did you end up using on it, and why was that the choice?
Well, Steven and I have shot, this was our 7th movie together, and every film we've shot prior to that has been anamorphic. And whether they've been Panavision or Hawk or, it was normally Panavision and Hawk lenses or Cook. Mostly Panavision. Panavision wasn't available, and it would have been hard to get the lenses from the States to Puerto Rico. And so I had been looking at some anamorphic lenses because a bunch of new ones have been coming out, and I saw these Ukrainian lenses called the Zelmas lenses. And I tested them, and I really liked the way they looked because I felt that they had a classic sort of 80s, 90s like vintage feel to them. And what I mean by that is movies like Die Hard and there was another movie I kept saying all these lenses look like this. Any kind of like John McTiernan film, I kept felt like they just responded to me. And I knew they flared a lot, and I wasn't intentionally trying to make flares, which there've been a couple reviews where they're saying, "Oh, he's got more flares than J.J. Abrams," which is absolutely not true.
Right.
Just because there's like a scene that has the flare. I wasn't intentionally doing that.
Yeah.
There was so much light coming towards them that they just responded really crazy with flares. A lot of anamorphic lenses don't do that.
Right.
But
I guess
those ones particularly.
Yeah. The environment too. Like, and those
Exactly.
shots are pretty neat because the walls, like when you see the movie, everyone, they're like boarded up walls. So you have shafts of light coming in,
and that's
so you get
why
these
you have
streaks.
4.
Yeah.
And if it was one, it would just be one. But the problem is the light's coming through, and it's thus that's refracting back onto the lens and thus making 4 different flares. So that was not intentional. I was not trying to do that. And so to that guy, go take a photography class. But the thing is I tested those, and then I needed, like, one of the lenses was having like calibration problems, and so I then used the Atlas Orions for certain shots. So because that one lens I had to send back, they had to redo it, and then it came back. So it's a mix of Zelmas anamorphics and Atlas Orions. So mostly Zelmas though. Yeah. And then the camera we used, which was new at the time, was the Red Raptor. And I knew that, Red had made some big strides early on. I'd stopped using their cameras because I just wasn't really happy with what they were doing in low light. And I exclusively used the Arri Alexa, and I shot a little bit with the Sony Venice, and but I wanted to give it a shot, so I did the Red Raptor, and I was really happy with it. It was really great in low light. So that combination with the red and the anamorphic really sort of it was a sort of a marriage we really liked. So that's what we went with.
And I'm not too familiar with the Red Raptor. I remember when it came out and reading about it at the time, but is it like a dual native ISO type of camera where you go into, you pass a certain like ISO threshold and then the noise floor goes down and all that?
Right.
I mean, I guess, how do you approach the low light? Are you like, do you bring the ISO up to a certain point that you might need, like 3200 or something, or do you stay down and just light the hell out of everything? Like, how do you usually?
No, I ride the ISO. I don't want to, like, I'm not one of those cinematographers that just, we're going to shoot everything at 800 and that's it. I ride the ISO because that's the way my eye works. And so the highest I think we went was, I think we did a 2560 or a 2500, somewhere in there. And I know night exteriors, I normally do 1280, I like it. My eyes are tuned to it. Like when I shoot the Alexa, they have that extended sensitivity in there, and they have it's kind of similar to Sony, but Sony has a dual ISO as well. But their extended sensitivity, it's like 2560, and I've shot a whole movie all night exterior on that 2560 Alexa 35, and
Oh wow.
I loved it. Some people don't like it. I like it, and I wasn't trying to be lazy or anything. It just gave me a little bit more into the image that I liked, and then when I got it to the color, it just gave me so much there that I really worked with it. So yeah, I mean, I'm one of the guys that rides the ISO. So. Yeah.
And I mean, I imagine this movie probably had like a somewhat modest budget, right? And
yeah, I mean, we were tight. I mean, it was, I believe it was somewhere between 7 and 8 something. It was like 8.8, 8.9,
damn,
something
okay,
like that. Yeah. So, which I mean, it's good, but you are still limited to what you could do.
Right. Yeah, I think especially with the concept and the fact that you got to build multiple of these monsters, and
correct,
you got whole like street, city, nights, machine guns, and like a lot going on. So I mean, I guess with the approach to lighting, I imagine in those terms, are you in this day and age like relying mainly on like RGB LED fixtures, or are you still rocking like HMIs and tungsten with a ton of gels? Like, how are you going about that? I mean, there's a lot of color. Like I was saying, I think before the recording, there's a lot of that like sodium vapor look, which I love, like the urban vapor orange.
Yeah.
Because it just takes me back to a time, right? Like growing up, and that's what all the street lights were. So when I think like city night, that's what I think. So you got a lot of that in the cyan and some purples, and you do some cool stuff where they'll have like a light stick that's red, and that's what's lighting them and whatnot. So with all that, with that color palette, are you deep into like LEDs and you're controlling it all with the app like a lot of people do now, or is it more of an older school approach, I guess?
It's sort of, that's a great question. It's sort of an old school, new school approach, because I remember around 2016, 2017, I had done a film with Steven, actually. It was Escape Plan 2. And my gaffer kept saying, hey, you got to use these LEDs. And I said, no way. I did a movie where I used LEDs and they quite weren't ready, and I had flicker issues, and I was just like so anti-LED. And then the sky panel came out from Ari, and I said, all right, I'll try it. And then to be able to in an instant get any color on the color wheel you want was such a new thing and relief. And then when Astera came out with these tubes, because I was a big Kino Flow guy when I shot film. I love Kino Flow.
Yeah.
Like they were just the best soft light you could have.
I still have my Kino Flows. I've got like my 4 foot, my 2 foot, my single bangs. I mean, I won't get rid of them.
I wish Kino Flow had progressed the way Astera did. I just don't know why they didn't. But I have a lot of Asteras in the movie, and I absolutely love mixed color temperature night exteriors. So I watched like Man on Fire is one of my favorite movies because of the mixed color temperature. City of God, I watched a lot for the night exteriors. Okay. And I wanted to kind of replicate that feel of the favelas in Brazil. And even though the movie, we say it takes place in Miami and we shot in Puerto Rico, Miami has like a neon. I always think of like the 80s or Miami Vice, right? With that, I can't remember their main drag is, where all the hotels are and everything. But I kind of want to inject that kind of 80s neon into there. So that's why I went with very bold colors with that one alley that they're walking through has with the graffiti. It's like pink and blue. I just tried to do that. And then, with the LEDs, then I would use a big HMI source at nighttime, or I'd use a big Ari 360 there. So and then I'd have tungsten lights in certain areas to hit that up. So mixing LED, HMI, and tungsten sources. So I try to, at one point in my career, I only want to shoot tungsten, because Storaro shot tungsten and he never uses HMIs, and death to HMIs and all that. But I've then come to realize you can't do that. You're going to have extreme amounts of power to have gigantic tungsten sources that just aren't, it's just not in this day and age, in this kind of climate and filming. You can't, unless you're a gigantic Marvel show that can do that. Right. A smaller movie, you're going to have like 3 or 4 plants, and you're going to have a lighting budget that will break the bank. So you can't do that. So having these companies like Aperture. Like I had a friend that worked at Aperture. He said, "Hey, take these F-22s, these AMRAMs. Keep them. Just
Nice.
take a picture and put them on the thing. Hey, try these new tubes we're doing. Use these fixtures. Let me know what you think." And I was like, "Great." I brought it to the gaffer. He was, "Oh yeah, we have the app. We just set it up." And I had a lighting guy who would just on the app do the thing, and then boom, it's go. It's almost a key position now.
Yeah,
is your board op. Normally people are like, "Oh, I don't want a board op." Now you have to have a board op because all of these things are either controlled on your phone or on an iPad. And you need somebody that can do that very quick and fast. So yeah, that's my approach. I'm old school, new school. So, yeah,
man, that's awesome. Yeah, I really like the the boldness, like you said, when it came to the colors and everything. It made it pretty, added to the excitement. So are you also operating at this stage in your career? You're operating too, like A or B cam or yeah. And was this normally? Sorry, go ahead.
Good.
Oh, was this a single camera show, or did you guys do like multiple cameras at times, or is it just all one?
No, it's a 2-camera show. And I learned how to shoot multiple camera working with Steven coming up because we would do these movies where they would be 17 days, 16 days, 13 days, 14 days. And these are like action movies. And you can't do it with one camera and get the coverage. I mean, you're going to have a pretty bad disjointed film that with not much coverage. So I learned very quickly, Tony Scott being one of my heroes in the film world. Tony would have 5, 6, 7 cameras on set, and he was the master of the multicam. I mean, and Ridley's right up there with him. Now we didn't have that many cameras; I had 2. But the way I light and the way I work with 2 cameras, I try to always have the main sort of angle and then an off angle, but the lighting doesn't suffer. Normally, when you shoot 2 cameras, people can't do it. If they can't do it, they'll be like, "Well, this is the main camera. Just put on a long lens and get some stuff over there." Yeah. Like that's ridiculous. That's it's like use the camera and light for both of them. And I've learned how to do that very quickly. And so I feel comfortable with 2 cameras. I do operate. I've operated almost all my movies. It depends. Sometimes the union will come down on you and say, "Oh, you didn't get the waiver, or you didn't get this. You have to get a waiver to operate." And maybe eventually when my back doesn't want me to do it anymore, I'll stop. But I like to operate. I like to be as close to the actors as I can. I like to be in there. I love handheld. I get hired because of some of my operating, and that's just part of my system of the way I shoot and I light. And it's if the camera's not in my hands, I can't stand still. I can't stand in a monitor and tell guys what to do in a headset. It's just not me because I could do it quicker than telling them. Yeah. And so that's why I do it. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was coming up and I was first, being young, I think everyone assumes at first, like, oh, the director is the one shooting it. And then you realize, oh, no, they're not even doing that. And then you're like, okay, the cinematographer is the one shooting it. And then you realize, oh, they're not even, most of them just kind of, they're literally directing the photography, but they're behind the monitor. And I remember when I first learned that, being on a set a long time ago, I was very shocked by that. So I'm always curious in like the different DPs that still continue to operate as well as, lead the charge. I mean, being both the DP and the camera operator, I imagine in that case, you're probably working pretty closely with the actors. I mean, how much do you get in there when it comes to performance, or maybe talking with them about light or anything like that? I'm finding that that seems to be coming up more and more to that cinematographer or even like a cam operator actor relationship. I mean, how's that going, or how does that, I guess, work for you? Are you really involved with the actors, or you just kind of stay back and let the director do everything? How does that go?
I am involved with them. I don't tell performance or anything. I leave that to the director. If I have an idea, I'll bring it up to the director. But as far as like the performance goes, I leave that to the director because that's not me. I mean, maybe one day I'll direct. I wouldn't mind it. I want to. But when it comes to if we have an idea, or if I want the actor to be in the light in a certain way, or even I normally have a steady cam, and on this we had a steady cam operator who was amazing. Christian, his name is incredible, from Puerto Rico. And when you're working with a steady cam op, for example, and you need the actor to hit a mark or do this or that, and he's got to wait. The Steadicam operator completely takes over and says, all right, if it's a long sequence and how you're going to move into that, because you saw in the house with the girl and with Ilfinish and Candace, there's some really dynamic, fast, swish pan, move fast with a Steadicam. And Christian Christian is pardon the phrase, is a brick shit house. And Frank would always come to set and say, "Oh, this fucking guy's bigger than me." It was because Frank's a ripped guy, and he works out a lot and he's proud of his physique. And Christian comes in and he's just this ripped, he's just David, right? But going to your point, Christian would be like, "All right, I need you to move here. I'm going to move this way." But that's a case where an operator, and I have a lot of operating friends, and they do that. That's the way it works. Because look, the director can sit here and direct the shot, but he's not the one holding the camera. The Steadicam operator is, and he'll come up with things like, hold a beat here. I'm going to move around. Now we'll go this way. I'm going to move around here. Hold that bit. So you need that. And then when it comes to like me talking to the actors, I do talk to the actors, and a lot of actors I'm friends with. And I've still been friends with, Dave Bautista is a really close friend of mine. Nice. I met him right after he did Guardians, and then we did a film together, and we've since done 3 films together. And he's blown up now, but we're trying to find something in the future to work on. But I love actors, and I love having relationships with actors, and I'm not afraid to talk to actors. And when I do, I'll say, hey, there's this light that's coming right here. If you could I'll put your mark here, but if you can maybe feel that a little bit, or with Frank's case and Katrina, when they're in the caves or that tunnel, I'd say, hold that light up just a little bit more. I want a little bit of flare. I want that, turn it this way so it comes on your face there. That kind of stuff, and they'll ask me, hey, Brandon, is this fine with it? Yeah, sure. And Steven allows me to talk to them. And I think that's cool that cinematographers do talk to actors, because I know some cinematographers that don't want to talk to actors at all because they just don't want to deal with that. But I like the relationship talking to the actors. So for me, that's where I do. And when I operate on certain things, I need you to stop here. I need you to do this, pause here, that. And we find that dance or that ballet.
Yeah, that's cool. Has there ever been any, I guess, maybe negative is not the right word, but where an actor will come in and be very particular of like, don't use this light on me, use this one, do that, don't do this, and you can't shoot on this lens and all that. Like, I've heard some horror stories, maybe from more like older cats and directors I've known from back in the day, where I guess with certain actors that was kind of a thing where like, you can't shoot me on anything above a 50 or whatever the case. Have you, I guess, in your line of work, come across any of that, and how have you had to deal with that? If so,
I had with two female actors that they weren't divas. I'm not going to say their names, because out of respect to them. But no, they were like, hey, look, they were a little bit older, and they said, hey, look, my neck is this, and can you just fill in a little more light here, and you just brighten it up a little more when I would normally, I wouldn't do that. And I, yeah, sure. That's easy. Fine. Yeah. And then I was very particular or very cautious of it. And I wanted to be, considerate to them, because listen, talking to the actors is important, because if you can get them to get past, oh my God, I hope I look good.
Right.
And they're not worried about that at all. They're not worried about the lights over there. This is there. They need to worry about what they're doing. They just trust you. And if you can get the actors to trust you, they're in their sandbox, right? They want to play in the sandbox. And if you can take away all of the nonsense, because a movie set it's nuts. I mean, there's lights, there's guys on their cell phones, there's this, there's that, people standing there just watching the actor. I try to always say, get out of the actor's eye line, all of this stuff. Yeah. And you're asking another person to be somebody else, to be emotional, while the grip's picking his nose over there. It's like, you see what I'm saying? So you have to have a trust between them. This is just me. This is my aesthetic. Maybe other DPs don't believe in that. And so I try to cater to what they need. Now I'm not going to go fetch them coffee or anything. That's what an assistant can do. But and that I think that's important. And there are actors, I mean, that maybe want a little love. I haven't had the lens thing. I was more like lighting.
Yeah.
You know, they just, hey, can you just give me a little bit more soft light here? Sure. That's fine. You know, and so I catered to it.
And you know, you were mentioning like some of the dynamic shooting in the house, which I'm assuming was a set, right? Like
that was a set. Yeah.
Okay.
The house was a set. Yeah.
So how do you approach? I mean, this might be kind of a big question, but I guess lighting interiors like that, but keeping, you know, some contrast. It's like low lit, but then obviously people are exposed. You still see them, but there's some contrast. It just seems very difficult to get when you're doing just here's a house, you know, and it's kind of a small environment. And thinking about shots like that, you know, the steady cam kind of moving through it from one room to the next.
Sure.
Like, I don't know, how are you like rigging and hiding everything? I guess like that's always just very interesting to me, is that side of it.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, you know, and I'm always constantly when I'm watching movies, I watch the movie to watch the movie, but I'm also like, okay, where's the light coming from?
Yeah.
You know, but in this case, you know, you have a house that we have the sconces in the hallway. We had the windows that for the daytime exterior or interior, I push light through the windows because when they're going over the rules about, you know, Frank and Ilfinish's character going over the rules about with the shotgun and keep the doors locked, all that stuff.
And those were beautiful interiors, by the way. Like I just love the way all that looked. Like that aesthetic was really great. That daytime stuff there.
Oh, I appreciate that, and that was fun. And so we had there was a few looks. So you had the daytime interior look, right? Then he boarded up the windows. Then you had just the practicals. And I went with the production designer and I told him, I said, Tyler Bishop, who's Heron, who's amazing, that built that set. And he did all the cars and built all the sort of broken down things around the streets and the fire barrels, all that. That's all Tyler. But I told him, I said, listen, I love practical lights and I'll use those. And I said, if you give me some sconces in the hallways and then a lamp there, and then we'll have Christmas lights in Candace's room, the little girl actress, and then we'll have some lights in the living room. And then there'll be a chandelier where all the security cameras are. I can augment off of that. So I'll have sources on the side that they're off camera. You don't see them. Now that's another section, right? And then what happens? The werewolves come and the electricity starts flickering. So then this is where the dimmer board op plays his ballet. He's got to get all these lights to flicker and time and all that. And then what happens? The power goes out. So now we have a scene we're lit by a flashlight, and it was a flashlight. And occasionally for them, I would have, if she was looking towards camera, I'd have bounce boards on other sides of the camera. So as she passed the camera, it would reflect off that, hit the camera, flare, hit back over here, and then go. And then the next thing is the power's out. They try to turn the electricity on. So what do? They say, oh, go light up the house. And then we had those lanterns that open up. Tyler brought me probably 12 different lamps like that, 12 different ones. And I had to open them up, look at them, film them, play them back. Does it flicker? All right, boom. No, that one flickers. That one's done. Yeah, that one's not bright enough. I don't like the color of that one. You know, and Steven, and we did. And we found these lamps that came off of Amazon that you pull them, open it like that, and they light. And so we had like 25 to 30 of those things.
Wow.
And we charge them up every night. And then we had to put them back where they went every single time. And then again, I had to bring in other sources to light with that. But I would use those in a way. I would move them around the house and be like, well, okay, she's behind the couch. All right, I'm going to put one here. Okay, she's over there. I'm going to put one over here. And then the other thing is when Ilfinish's character hears the werewolves on the roof, and ever she shoots the ceiling, and then the moonlight comes through. I had to have a moonlight source coming through there with water because it started to rain at certain points, and then another moonlight. And then, of course, the crashing down in the kitchen, had to have another source of that. So you have that. And then the last one, I don't want to give away, but you know, it's morning time and you have to have that. So just with the interior of that, those were sort of the basic, that was the sort of chronology of that lighting setup. So you had to have all of those things. I mean, and I would light it, like I said, with practicals, and I'd come in with tubes. I'd come in with the amarams. I'd come in with the backlight here and there. And that was sort of the case, man. That's how we did it.
And what is your, I guess this is one of those kind of detailed questions.
Oh, please.
I mean, I guess like
you ask anything.
Yeah, I guess like a recipe for moonlight, it's like, because now that you mention it, yeah, when they shoot through the ceiling and the light seeping through, and even other moments where you see the moonlight kind of streaking into the scene, it's not that like very saturated blue like some films get. You
No.
like really nail that kind of grayish, more natural look. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess what's your, like, how do you get to that point? Because I've been doing a lot of like horror shorts with my friend, and I just lean into like an evening blue gel. I'm just going for it. Because I like kind of like Italian giallo movies and stuff where they're colorful, and like Dean Cundy. If you watch like Halloween and Back to the Future, yeah, like his moonlight's pretty blue. The Thing, yeah,
it's pretty blue. Yeah, yeah,
so,
of course. No,
trying to get to that natural look. Like, so how did you approach that?
I basically because we kept saying the supermoon, and we had a full moon, but I always felt the supermoon felt like it came closer to the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just brighter than normal. So I took the approach of saying, okay, it's not blue light, it's white light. It's sort of whatever this white light, even though it looks godly, it's doing something to human beings that's transforming their body and their DNA and their chemical within their body, and they're turning into these werewolves. So I figured, let's not make it blue. Let's not make it green, whatever. Let's just make it white. And so that's what we did. I just made it a harsh, strong, obviously with atmosphere actually see it light. And that was sort of I was sort of my mind thinking. I felt that the supermoon was actually illuminating a little more than normal. It's like they turned it up to, instead of it being at 5, they turned it up to 11 when the supermoon comes. So that's what I did.
Yeah, it just seems like it would be tricky to balance, because thinking like white light, then I feel like if I did that, then it'd be like, well, why is there just daylight coming through? But it's still like in the movie, it still looks like moonlight. It's completely authentic, I guess.
Oh,
is the
cool.
Word. So,
I go on intuition, and I go on gut, and just Roger Deakins gave the best answer for an interview I saw. I saw this interview with him is back in 2001 or 2002, and it was for The Man Who Wasn't There, the black and white film he did with the Coen brothers, and it's film noir. And they said, oh, this guy came up with this whole esoteric sort of question of like, oh, this is this, and it's because of this, and oh, the French Mason scene and this and that, all this, just fluffy nonsense. And well, why would you? Wow, and it's because of this. And Roger, you did it because of that. And Deakins just looks at him and goes, I don't know, mate. I just like the way it looks.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
And sometimes it's that simple. And I know you want an answer that's this scientific thing, but I mean, I aesthetically it looked right. And in my mind, when I read the script, we all seen a supermoon or the blood moon or whatever those things are that, people sort of tend to go a little crazy on at that certain time of the year. But I just felt in the story that the moon was brighter just on that night and thus caused some reaction to the human beings. And so I felt, hey, let's not lean into the blue. Let's just make it white light.
Yeah.
So that's what I did that. That's my answer. There you go.
Yeah.
And thank you for liking it. That's cool. I'm glad that it didn't seem so artificial or fake or whatever.
Going into, I mean, I guess your early career, because we haven't talked about that yet. I mean, are you a film school grad, or did you just kind of pick up a camera and you learned and got on set and went from there? What was your start? Like, how'd you get to this point?
Well, always being a fan of movies. I think, everybody says, what's the one movie that made you want to make movies, or when was that time? I was 7 or 8 years old, and my father took me to see Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was a kid. And I didn't know what the movie was about. All I knew was I was going to the movies, and we sat down, and the screen goes dark, and this is tracking shot or the very first shot. Guy walks up, there's the mountain. You don't know what's going on. It says Raiders of the Lost Ark, Paramount logo, transitions, whatever. And then you get to this thing, or you get to this guy. This guy's in the hat. You don't know who it is. You can't see him. And then he turns, does the whip and turns around, and it's Harrison Ford. And I go, Dad, why is Han Solo in a hat? I don't understand. But that's just long story short. When it came to the sequence where he's chasing the Ark after the Germans have it in the truck, and there's that whole action sequence where he fights on the truck and he goes, that had me captivated. I was just mesmerized by it. I'd never seen anything like that before in my life. And all I kept asking my dad afterwards, Dad, how did they do that? How did they do that? I wanted to know, because, there was no BTS, that stuff back then. They didn't have that. So he said, well, I don't know. Let's go see it again. So we saw it the second day it came out, and then we saw it again. And then from that point on, movies became this sort of escape for me. And I was an illustrator, and I wanted to draw comic books. And then my friend got a Super 8 camera, and we started making movies together with our G.I. Joes and the Star Wars figures. And then it started turning, hey, let's make like a Ghostbusters movie. Hey, let's make like a comedy movie. I wasn't taking it seriously then. I wasn't thinking I could do a career in this. I was just having fun with my friends. But then when I got to art school, I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I was going to go to be a comic book illustrator. And when I went there, I was taking all the classes and whatnot. And I went and finally took my first comic book illustration class. And I realized very quickly that I was completely out of my element and that I would not be able to do it. And so on a whim, I said, well, let me take this film production class. And from that, I got a camera in my hands. I shot something. And immediately I realized, okay, I'm going to trade my paint brushes and my pencils for a camera and lights. And that was it. And so that sent me on, and I did undergrad there. I stopped and, did other things. And then I went back, finished. And then I made short films. I learned film. I started on film. That's what was my bread and butter. And then from there, I got into the American Film Institute for cinematography. Nice. So I went to their grad program. And then from there, that's when I really honed my skills. And I met some of my best friends that are all out, a few of them are in the ASC, and everybody from my class is pretty damn successful. So nice. I was on my way, and then where it then went from there was I got into music videos. Started in music videos, never thinking I would, but and then for music videos, I got an agent, and then the whole entire time of this journey was to get into films. That's what I did, and then I got my first film, and then the first really bigger movie for me was a horror movie called The Collector that I did back in 2009. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't. No. I'm familiar with it. I know it was pretty popular at the time, for sure.
It's pretty popular at the time. It sort of got overshadowed because that was the same year Paranormal Activity came out, and it was within a week of when my movie came out, and we just got destroyed. Yeah. The found footage genre was born, right? And it was, whatever. But that has a giallo feel to it. Okay. It's a very, very Mario Brava and who's the guy that did
Argento?
Argento, yes. Thank you. I'm sorry. That Argento's color palette's very influenced in The Collector. You'll see it.
Okay.
See The Collector.
Okay.
I didn't shoot The Collection. I shot The Collector, so I shot the first one.
Okay.
Not to say that The Collection isn't a bad movie. I just that I shot the first one, so there you go. But that's sort of my journey. That's how I got there. So yeah.
Nice. And then how did you connect with Stephen Miller, right? Or Stephen C. Miller?
Stephen C. Miller, yeah.
7. This is the 7th film you done with him?
7th film.
So how did you guys connect? And I like to ask everybody this too, is what is the, as a cinematographer, what qualities do you, I guess, look for or appreciate most in the directors you work with?
All right. So it's 2 parts. So I'll start with how I met. No, it's okay. I met Steven. I had done a film with a company called Emmett Furla Films, EFO Films, and it's Randall Emmett and George Furla. I did this film called Heist, which was called Bus 657. It was a heist movie, took place on a bus, and had like Robert De Niro. That's where I met Dave Bautista, Gina Carano, all these different actors. And one of their executives had found Steven through his past work. And they had a film with him, a Bruce Willis movie they wanted to make called Extraction, not the one with Chris Hemsworth, but this is before that. And it was with Bruce Willis. And they said, do you have a DP? He's like, no. He said, well, take a look at this movie. And they showed him Heist. Steven loved it. He's like, well, can you get this guy? And he said, yeah, we can. And so they gave me the script. I read it. And then we met over the phone. And then we went to have a drink in Hollywood. And we basically just started. Now, this gets into the second part of the question that you asked about what do you look for in quality as a director? We started talking about the movies we love and the filmmakers we love, and not even talking about the movie, just about like, you know, we both love Tony Scott and we both love James Cameron and we both love Spielberg and we both love, you know, just very, very similar. And when you can have the same aesthetic of the movies and sort of the ideals and how you want to shoot, you know, what you like to light and how you like to be on set, it's kind of a no-brainer. You tend to want to gravitate towards people like that, because if you work with a director where you're saying, well, I want to shoot everything in wides and I want everything to be this. And you're like, well, I really think we need more coverage. No, I just want to do a wide, you know, that's it. And it's probably not the guy you want to work with if you're not doing the same thing. So you want to find like-minded people and sort of that share the same visual and storytelling aesthetic together. So that was what, you know, that was what I felt and what I saw, and, you know, doing it 7 more times with him. It's been fun. And to Steven's credit, you know, he's been doing this a while, as have I. And, you know, I'm hoping for him that this movie sort of catapults him to get to a bigger level. Not to say that Werewolves isn't, but, you know, it is. You're stuck you're hindered by what you can do creatively on a budget. And so I want to see Steven get a bigger budget movie. I want to see him, you know, give him the days, you know, that he can, because I'm telling you, man, if they gave us 30, 40, 50 days and a budget to work, I mean, you're going to see some just bigger stuff. And that's not a jab on Werewolves. I think Werewolves I'm proud of that movie. I think it's fun, man. And that we didn't set out to win any awards. We're not trying to change people's perception of Werewolves. Yeah. We're not trying to make it a critical, acclaimed, you know, thing. We want people to have fun in the movies. What's wrong with having fun? Why do we have to nitpick on, you know, certain things? Just go turn your brain off, man. It's a popcorn movie. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So it's like people need to just relax a little bit when they watch movies and not take them so as Bible or like as the word. It's like, dude, it's entertainment. That's what we do. You just and not everything has to be based in reality. So as to answer your question, that those are the things I look for in a director, and that's how that was how I met Steven.
Nice. And how many days was this shoot? You may have mentioned it like in the beginning, but
I think it was 20. I'm pretty sure it was 28 or 29 days. I think it was like that.
Damn, that's a lot for that amount of time, right? Like everything you guys did, was that pretty tough, or did it feel manageable, or were there days where you're like, man, we got to bang out like 14 pages today, or anything crazy like that?
Yeah, I know. I mean, where it was easy was on the stage. It was easy because it was already, we were always in, okay, are we in, okay, we knew the daytime stuff, right? That's done. All right, now where are we in the story? Okay, we try to go in progression, like start with the daytime interior stuff, then go from, it's night boarded up, then go from now the damage is there. That stuff we tended to move pretty quickly in that. When we got out on the street, that's where it got really, because you're dealing with, you got to understand, man, we're in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is not a cooler climate. Okay. It's hot. It's really hot. And we're 95 plus humidity in a tropical island. You can imagine it's already starting to be rough on your body on top of the guys that are in the werewolf suits. You're talking about 70 pounds of latex.
Right.
You got about 10 or 15 minutes before these guys got to get out of those suits. Damn. And so that's hard. And these guys, the moment they'd sit down, you'd see these people run over with these hoses to put them in there, and they just pump all this air in there for these guys, or they take the helmets off. And I remember the first time we did it, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be long.
Yeah.
I don't know if we got to figure out a system for this, because this is, at first it was a little touch and go. But once Alec sort of figured out, okay, it just took a second, to figure it out. And then you work the problem. You don't just go, oh my God, you just got to work the problem. And so where it got tricky was at nighttime. And it was, getting in the streets, getting all the stuff in place, lighting all the barrels, getting all that stuff. I think the biggest set piece of the movie was when the four guys with the Gatling gun and the wolf killers, we called them. It was a big set piece because there's a lot going on in that.
Right.
And so we had like 4 or 5 werewolves there, plus the punk princess that she comes down from the sign. And that was a big stunt gag, and you had to be ready for that. So you say, 27, 28 days. Well, if 10 or 15 of those days are on the stage, then you have the other ones. And you're limited with the time with an actor, because you only have Frank for a certain amount of days or whatever. You have to use those days wisely. And if you don't get it, you better get it on the next day, because you're not going to go back. You can't go back and, we got to reshoot or this and that. So yeah, I mean, it was nice to have 27 or 28 days, whatever we were at.
I guess before we wrap it up, I mean, one question something I'd be curious to hear is just how you navigate some of the politics with producers and whatnot. If you're within this budget realm, you're shooting in Puerto Rico, you've got 28 days to do it. And when, your gaffer is coming to you with like, hey, we want to use these kind of fixtures or lights, or we need this, or camera, we need the Technocrane, we need this and that. And now you've got to do the talks with the money people, right? And your director on like getting all that set, like, what do we need? Yeah. We need this tool to make sure the werewolves look good, whatever the case may be. I mean, did you run any, and I can only imagine that, especially when you're going, to a whole other place, and again, the budget is here, the time frame is here. Like, is there any, I guess, insight you can give into how you, solve certain problems that may have arisen or not, like, or was it pretty smooth sailing? I mean, maybe it was, I don't know.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't smooth sailing. And I'll tell you what happened was, because of Puerto Rico's tax incentives, there were 4 other productions there while we were there. One was, I think it was called The Resort. Another one was called Fantasy Island. And then Blue Beetle, the big Warner Brothers DC movie, was coming there. And we had pre-scouted in February 22. And I went and met the camera people. I met the camera grip and electric house. There's only one, and it's all under one roof. Everything's all under one roof. So I couldn't get a dolly because all the dollies were on all the shows. I had put in days that I wanted. I had 9 Technocrane days, right? And normally when you get a Technocrane, you're like, oh, we'll just use it for one shot and that's that, or whatever. It doesn't work like the way. If you rent a Technocrane to a producer, you have to justify why you want to use the thing. Right. So if I'm using it that day, I'm going to use it all day. As a moving platform. So, and these are things, I think I had 9, they went down to 7, right? And then what happened was I put all this stuff in early. These are the days we need it. These is what the da-da-da-da-da. I get there. The other show has a Technocrane. And they're like, oh, I'll just give you a jib arm. I'm like, no, don't want a jib arm. I want a Technocrane. And so I was like calling the key grip on that show to his show. All right, what days? There was 2 Technocranes. There was a 20 and a 30, a 25 and a 30. And they had them both. And I was just like, this is ridiculous, So I was dealing with that. And then, Brandon, your lighting budget's a little big here. So then what you do is like, all right, well, I can use these lights for this much during the week, but then I'll give them back so I can save money on that. So you'd be bringing things in, bringing things out, sub-renting this, sub-renting that. So like I knew HMIs or bigger lights at the stage, I would use those just on that time. And then I would take those away, and then I would go more primarily LEDs for the street stuff and deal with that way. So you're constantly dealing with, Brandon, the cost is this, you got to bring it down. Brandon, Do you really need the technocrate this much? Do you really need that? And it's a balance. And yes, I got some things and other things I didn't get, but I think that's part of the thing of being a cinematographer. You have to be a politician to deal with the politics and the bullshit. You have to be a scientist because you got to keep up with technology and think of new ways of doing things. And you have to be creative. And so, and you have to be able to tell a story and do your job, and so, and be professional, because everybody wants to, when they're faced with adversity or, problems like, oh, Brandon, we can't have this. The first thing you want to do is, fuck this. You can't be that way.
Right.
You have to be professional. So you have to figure out a way to be mature about it and be an adult and say, okay, yeah, you know what? I can kind of stick to your guns and say, I need this for this night exterior. It's going to make it better. And you got to be able to convince them. And if you can, then, you're doing a job. I've been pretty good at what I want to do because I play the give and take game. You give me this, I'll save you money here. And I end up doing that, and Steven and I sometimes, and we would shoot and finish early. So we would save them money there, or we knew, all right, guys, this night's going to be a little bit longer. We got to go here. So yeah, that's the game. It's constant, and it's even happens on bigger shows. If you believe, if you wouldn't believe it, it actually does. Yeah. So just because it's a low budget movie, you have to deal with stuff. Even the big shows have the same problems.
Have there ever been moments where, say, all right, we don't have the techno crane today, so now we've got to completely rethink how we're going to do this. Maybe we'll do it handheld or this way and just kind of switch it up. And I mean, do you find maybe more often than not, or less than you would hope, that however you solve the issue, like sometimes it may work even better or open you up to, I guess, something more creative possibly? Or are there times where you look at the movie and you're just like, damn it, I remember that day and that's not what it was supposed to be? And like a little bit of both, I'd imagine.
If you watch the movie again in the lab where they were testing the subjects, right? I had a techno crane for a day. So all the shots when they're pushing in on the subjects and the camera does that little Dutch, all of that type stuff, and the swooping shots there. I had it, and then they said, "Well, I can give you a crane," because then I didn't want that crane, but because I don't like fixed cranes, they're pain in the ass. But some of the shots with Lou Diamond Phillips looking up, I would just do these simple shots, and these shots looking down, I would do that. So I think the mix of that was really nice. But then we were going to use the techno crane on the floor when the guys are like, we can't find the werewolves and all the flashing lights. And then I just said, listen, Steven, why don't we just put Christian on the Steadicam and we can just do these swooping shots around him and it'll kind of be like our moving techno crane. And to be honest with you, now seeing it, I'm glad we did it that way because the techno crane would have probably been cumbersome to do it that way. And so that's where, you have to be creative and you have to use what you have to do. And Christian, God bless him. I mean, he's a strong guy. We ran his back into the ground, but like he never complained. He did everything and he knew what we were doing. He knew this was like something special. And so I wouldn't have changed it then, if I could. So that was one thing where we had to do it that way. So I think it worked out in our favor.
Yeah. Nice, man. Well, I think before we wrap it up here, there's one more thing I wanted to hear a little bit about. I'm a massive Wu-Tang Clan fan, and I saw that you shot Cutthroat City, I think it was called, for RZA. You directed it.
I did.
How was that gig? I actually worked a gig with RZA at Capitol Records maybe 2016. I was like the 5th or 6th camera person, so I wasn't like in the mix interacting or anything, but it was like a recording session with an orchestra. It was some collaboration he was doing with Chipotle, but I thought it was very cool because I've been a big fan since I was a little kid, and he was like everything I hoped he would be. I'm like, oh, you're the guy, because some people you meet and you find out, oh, you have a certain persona when you're on camera, or you put on a character, and when you see them in real life, they're way not that. I mean, how was that working with him as a director? I don't know if you're a fan of the music at all, but working on that film, and him as a director and whatnot.
I saw him yesterday actually because we're finished. We shot a movie in April together. So I'll start with what she's like and then get to that. RZA is everything you want him to be. He's a great human being. He's a collaborator. Me being a martial artist as well, I took martial arts. RZA's a martial artist. We both love Bruce Lee. We both love Kung Fu films. He is the Quentin Tarantino of martial arts films. He knows everything about martial arts films. And he's an encyclopedia of music. And yes, I was a gigantic Wu-Tang fan. So, and I still am. And to work with him was very, very special. And I've cultivated that relationship, and we still, like I said, I saw him yesterday. I saw him all week because we did Cutthroat in 2017, and this new film came along called One Spoon of Chocolate that he wrote and he directed. I don't want to give too much away because we're probably going to roll it out around February, March, maybe at South by Southwest. Hopefully, I'm not sure, but if you like RZA and you like what he does, I think you'll like the movie. We're going to continue to work together. So he's a special guy, and all of that sort of hip hop swag, Wu-Tang-isms, all that. That's him. That's who he is. You know, I know if RZA, it's so funny because we were in the Color the other day and we were trying to find a look for this movie, and I had done it the way I thought we did when we were shooting it. And then, because I was putting LUTs on it and everything, he's just like, it just needs something else, B Cox. That's people call me B Cox. It's my nickname. And I said, I don't know, RZA, what is it, man? He's like, it needs the crack, man. You got to give it the crack. And I'm like, the crack. All right. And what that means is it's got to have the flavor. It's got to have something. So he went away, and I tried something with the colorist. He came back. He's like, that's it, B Cox. That's what it's got to look. So then I went back and I started the whole thing. And the guy, my colorist, you know, he's sitting back there, and he's new. I've never worked with this guy before, so this was a new sort of thing. He said, I don't know how you distinguish what he means. I said, dude, listen, it took me a second because RZA has his own thing and his own phrases, his own way, his own swag, and you learn it very quickly. Yeah. And so, I mean, he's a great guy, and thank you for bringing that up. You know, much like Steven's same way. You know, Steven and I talk in movie references. Steven and I talk in movie terms, and he's great on set. He's a great collaborator. You know, you don't work with somebody 7 times and not have some sort of relationship there. And he's a friend. And I again, like I said, I want to see Steven, you know, make that hump in that journey. I mean, he's been doing it a while, like me, but you know, he's grinding. You know, he's grinding. We're all still grinding. But RZA, the same thing. You know, RZA's kind of taken a step back from hip hop, and he's really putting himself into movies now. I mean, he just released a ballet. Like, he did a full ballet orchestra, full piece deal. You know, and there you go.
Yeah,
you know,
amazing.
It's cool. It's cool to watch him, and he knows how to bring out. I've noted his superpower. Everybody has a superpower with people, and his superpower is he knows how to bring out the best of you. Thus, the Wu-Tang Clan. Right. He brought out the best of every single one of those people, and he does that on set. It's a beautiful gift to be able to get the best out of people. I don't know how. I try to do it with my crew, and he just does it with people. He lights up a room every time he comes in. Everybody listens to him.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, I remember doing that gig at Capitol Records and just hearing him speak to everyone about what the project was. It kind of felt that way. I was like, oh man, I'm like hyped up. Like,
exactly.
Like, and this is the way you said it is the way I described it to people as well. Like, and we only interacted for like a few minutes. I was wearing a Seven Samurai shirt, so he commented on it. We were talking.
Of course, he loved that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was like, man, you're everything I hoped you would be. You know, like in reality. Yeah, that's super cool. Can I ask what your favorite Bruce Lee movie is?
Funny enough, you probably think I'm going to say it's Enter the Dragon.
No, I'm not. Can I make a guess then?
It's go ahead.
Fist of Fury, aka The Chinese Connection.
Close. It's Return of the Dragon. Way of the
Okay.
Dragon. I don't know why. I just love that movie because taking martial arts, it brings in a lot of the concept of Jeet Kune Do. I love the fact that he directed it, and that it just, the scene in the Coliseum with him versus Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Just the scene in the alley where he's talking about kung fu or Chinese boxing. There's something about that movie, man. I don't get me wrong. Enter the Dragon and Chinese Connection, incredible movies, and they're still some of my favorite movies. But if I had to encapsulate Bruce Lee's, like everything he was about, I'd have to say it's Way of the Dragon, man.
Yeah,
that's just my favorite movie.
That was the first Bruce Lee movie I saw. I remember when I rented it, and that was the first one I watched. And I'll never forget when he's in his hotel room or whatever, and he's just doing his like stretches.
You're just like, what is this? This guy's a machine.
And the alley fight's amazing too. Yeah, it's
incredible. Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, Enter the Dragon is like, it's a classic, man. It's you got the mirror fight, you got the Bolo Yun, the whole thing with the guy with a claw. It's awesome. I mean, just stay tuned to the internet movie martial arts stuff or whatever, because Riz and I are going to work on something pretty cool soon.
Yes, that's what's up. Dang. All right, man. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here unless there's anything else you want to plug or say before we end it.
I want to say thank you and thanks to the fans for going to see Werewolves. It's out now in theaters everywhere, and find your AMC and hit the Fandango and go check it out, because Steven made a fun movie that I think, I hope inspires more people to go want to demand this kind of film. So I think that we're a little movie that could, and we just want people to go have fun when they go see this movie.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. But thank you, man. It has been a blast, and I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for joining me and taking the time today. Everyone, it's out this weekend, Werewolves. It's in theaters. Go check it out. Like Brandon said, fun movie, just werewolves and action and all that stuff. Like, get yourself some popcorn, get an icy, and just have a good time at the movies, But yeah, man, thanks again so much for coming down and chatting with me. It's been good. Hopefully we'll talk again sometime when those new projects drop. And then
please do. We'll have a drink and talk about those as well. And if, like I said, when you go see Werewolves, follow it with a nice old fashioned. You're good to
go. All right. Cool. Cheers, everyone.
Guys. Take it easy.
Thank you for listening to the Drinks in a Movie podcast. You can now find us on Instagram at Drinks in a Movie Pod, where we'll be posting photos from all the various films that we discuss. You can also email us at drinksinAmoviepod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and thank you for listening.